The execution of the Ogoni 9, coupled with the historical context that envelopes it, underscores long-standing grievances in the Niger Delta. These events have indelibly marked the community, leaving behind a legacy of pain and unrest. In response, the Ken Saro-Wiwa Foundation has vocalized their firm opposition to any form of pardon for those involved, instead advocating for exoneration. This stance highlights a critical demand for justice and the acknowledgement of the grievous injustices suffered. The issue of extrajudicial killings, alongside the persistent absence of justice for the Ogoni 9, continues to exacerbate tensions in the region. This unresolved matter poses a significant obstacle to reconciliation and healing within the community. Furthermore, the truth and reconciliation process emerges as a vital mechanism for confronting past injustices and fostering unity among families affected by historical conflicts. Although often painful, this process is deemed essential for achieving long-term healing. Additionally, the need for a holistic approach is underscored, suggesting that a comprehensive strategy engaging all stakeholders is crucial for resolving ongoing issues and facilitating mutual understanding and closure. Moreover, political dynamics within opposition parties reveal self-inflicted wounds that compromise their effectiveness. The president's comments on their challenges highlight the inherently competitive nature of the political landscape and the necessity for strategic evolution. Consequently, opposition parties must reassess their strategies to present a united front, thereby enabling them to effectively challenge the ruling government and address Nigeria's pressing issues. Prioritizing cooperation over individual ambitions is essential in this regard. Critics contend that the current administration has neglected critical issues such as insecurity and economic decline, demonstrating a troubling lack of focus on governance beyond mere political rivalry. The opposition has actively highlighted these failures in their responses. This discourse further amplifies the challenges of leadership within opposition parties, accentuating the necessity for members to transcend personal ambitions for the collective good. Such sacrifices are imperative for effective governance and unity. Simultaneously, the enduring anguish faced by the families of the Ogoni 4 elucidates the emotional toll imposed by historical injustices, as their demand for recognition and accountability persists. Every governmental action that neglects their legacy reignites this pain. Concerns have also been raised regarding the Nigerian government's decision to honor individuals linked to these killings, prompting scrutiny of the moral standards guiding such actions and their implications for justice in society. This decision is perceived as a troubling precedent. Additionally, this conversation reflects overarching themes of environmental activism and the complexities surrounding accountability within leadership movements. The speaker critiques those who exploit these movements for personal gain. The speaker underscores the detrimental impact of disinformation among the youth concerning the Ogoni 9 case, illuminating a significant gap in understanding historical events. This lack of awareness complicates the pursuit of justice. There is a growing demand for a judicial inquiry to investigate the irregularities of the 1995 tribunal that convicted the Ogoni 9, a conviction many deem unjust. Such an inquiry could represent a pivotal step toward restoring justice. The emotional toll experienced by the families of the victims is profound, with the speaker expressing empathy for their father and the injustices endured. Recognizing their suffering is crucial for a unified resolution moving forward. Moreover, the pursuit of financial compensation often overshadows the critical need for justice and truth regarding the murders of the Ogoni people in 1994. This focus on monetary restitution complicates reconciliation efforts. Transgenerational trauma remains a pervasive issue within the Ogoni community, perpetuating division and obstructing unity. The failure to engage with past injustices continues to inhibit healing and fosters ongoing resentment. Furthermore, environmental degradation and systemic injustice persist as pressing challenges for the Ogoni people, compounding their struggles. Addressing these deep-rooted issues is essential for achieving lasting peace and fairness. The president's acknowledgement of past mistakes is pivotal for healing, demonstrating accountability and a commitment to addressing grievances. This approach can foster trust among the affected communities. Finally, the economic ramifications of the Ogoni situation are substantial, as their potential oil production could significantly impact the national economy. Recognizing their contributions is vital for equitable development. In conclusion, the involvement of a neutral third party in conflict resolution is vital, as they can facilitate dialogue between traumatized communities. This neutrality is crucial for achieving closure and fostering understanding. The execution of the Ogoni 9, coupled with the historical context that envelopes it, underscores long-standing grievances in the Niger Delta. These events have indelibly marked the community, leaving behind a legacy of pain and unrest. In response, the Ken Saro-Wiwa Foundation has vocalized their firm opposition to any form of pardon for those involved, instead advocating for exoneration. This stance highlights a critical demand for justice and the acknowledgement of the grievous injustices suffered. The issue of extrajudicial killings, alongside the persistent absence of justice for the Ogoni 9, continues to exacerbate tensions in the region. This unresolved matter poses a significant obstacle to reconciliation and healing within the community. Furthermore, the truth and reconciliation process emerges as a vital mechanism for confronting past injustices and fostering unity among families affected by historical conflicts. Although often painful, this process is deemed essential for achieving long-term healing. Additionally, the need for a holistic approach is underscored, suggesting that a comprehensive strategy engaging all stakeholders is crucial for resolving ongoing issues and facilitating mutual understanding and closure. Moreover, political dynamics within opposition parties reveal self-inflicted wounds that compromise their effectiveness. The president's comments on their challenges highlight the inherently competitive nature of the political landscape and the necessity for strategic evolution. Consequently, opposition parties must reassess their strategies to present a united front, thereby enabling them to effectively challenge the ruling government and address Nigeria's pressing issues. Prioritizing cooperation over individual ambitions is essential in this regard. Critics contend that the current administration has neglected critical issues such as insecurity and economic decline, demonstrating a troubling lack of focus on governance beyond mere political rivalry. The opposition has actively highlighted these failures in their responses. This discourse further amplifies the challenges of leadership within opposition parties, accentuating the necessity for members to transcend personal ambitions for the collective good. Such sacrifices are imperative for effective governance and unity. Simultaneously, the enduring anguish faced by the families of the Ogoni 4 elucidates the emotional toll imposed by historical injustices, as their demand for recognition and accountability persists. Every governmental action that neglects their legacy reignites this pain. Concerns have also been raised regarding the Nigerian government's decision to honor individuals linked to these killings, prompting scrutiny of the moral standards guiding such actions and their implications for justice in society. This decision is perceived as a troubling precedent. Additionally, this conversation reflects overarching themes of environmental activism and the complexities surrounding accountability within leadership movements. The speaker critiques those who exploit these movements for personal gain. The speaker underscores the detrimental impact of disinformation among the youth concerning the Ogoni 9 case, illuminating a significant gap in understanding historical events. This lack of awareness complicates the pursuit of justice. There is a growing demand for a judicial inquiry to investigate the irregularities of the 1995 tribunal that convicted the Ogoni 9, a conviction many deem unjust. Such an inquiry could represent a pivotal step toward restoring justice. The emotional toll experienced by the families of the victims is profound, with the speaker expressing empathy for their father and the injustices endured. Recognizing their suffering is crucial for a unified resolution moving forward.
To Port Harcourt, live to speak to Yusuf Badey. As we speak, they're all getting mic'd up and positioned in the right place so that we can go live and have a jolly good chat with him. But before we do that, let's enrich our perspectives with our guest contributors who will give us their views and expertise on nearly everything that we're going to be covering today on the program and beyond. And for this, I'm joined now in the studio by the policy strategist and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf, and by the communications and strategy consultant in the office of the Senate President, Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're starting from bottom up this time because they've got to get all their wires properly connected in Port Harcourt. But let me ask you this, because you heard what was going on in the Niger Delta. Let me actually start with you, because you are from the Niger Delta.
Yes.
You've heard all the issues around the president's declaration in his sort of Democracy Day speech. I wonder what you think, Kenny, given the backdrop of the ongoing divisions in Ogoniland and the deep scars left behind by the execution. You're looking at me very strange.
No. I mean, I know so much.
On, let me make the point first. Given the backdrop of the ongoing divisions in Ogoniland and the deep scars left behind by the execution of the Ogoni 9, including Ken Saro-Wiwa, and of course the murder of the Ogoni 4, why take this presidential action? That's what a lot of people are asking. Why take it now? An action that will be seen by many in Ogoniland as provocative and as the president taking sides, and will clearly not heal the divisions in that Ogoniland, but is likely to deepen them.
Would have been a good thing to listen to your guest in Port Harcourt first and hear what his perspective is.
Well, obviously he's not ready.
But he's not ready. No, that's what I'm saying. But you see,
but when he comes, we will go to him.
All right.
Have a chat with him and come back to you, and you can respond.
So one of the lows of the Abacha's regime, I'm sure you agree with me, was the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa and his 8 colleagues. What a lot of people felt was that the trial was not properly conducted. They felt it was a mock trial. They felt that the evidences that were presented were not such that should have led to Ken Saro-Wiwa being found guilty. And again, if you remember that they were killed in a very, would I say, secretive circumstances, because they had been executed before the nation was told that they had actually executed the 9. And so it's been something that has, lingered on for a long time. You look at it from this perspective. The government of the day was accused of a whole lot of cover-ups in the murder in the killing of those 9 people. Well, why you would sympathize with the 4 people who died out of the result of mob action? But when mob action, there's so many people that you can find guilty of it. What they accused Ken Saro-Wiwa of was that he gave the instructions. It was, I don't know how to put it, but the impression that was given was that the facts that were given in court was neither here or there. And so by what President Tinubu did, you would imagine that there are facts that are also available to President Tinubu that might not be available to all of us here. Just like what you're seeing when they're talking about the files for the Kennedy assassination, and they're releasing those files. So those facts that are available would have led to certain decisions that led him into saying that, look, at this point in time, we'll have to maybe look for how we can mend fences. And he took the decisions he took.
Right. Okay, let me come to you, Baba Yusuf, because it's interesting that in 2021, the Ken Saro-Wiwa, because it's not just the Ogoni 4, the people who support Ken Saro-Wiwa are opposed to this pardon. And it's interesting that in 2021, the Ken Saro-Wiwa Foundation rejected the idea of a state pardon for Mr. Saro-Wiwa and the rest of the Ogoni 9 when the then President Buhari suggested it, because they insisted that the Ogoni 9 were not criminals, but were unjustly murdered, executed for fighting a just cause on behalf of their oppressed community. And this time they said, this one that President Tinubu just did, they had not authorized anyone to ask for a pardon or a clemency. What they want is exoneration. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a reflection of the tragedy of our evolution, Charles. What happened to Ken Saro-Wiwa and others, his co-travelers, is quite unfortunate. I wrote about it last year and I said, late Abacha denied us the opportunity to have proper justice and closure on this issue. There is no gainsaying that it was purely extrajudicial killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa and others on his side. And why so? Because the extrajudicial killing has left open this wound that has become almost cancerous on the other side of people that felt or that feel, Ken Saro-Wiwa is responsible for the death of their own leaders, albeit sadly also ironically, they are all members of the same family of the Ogoni. And the process to have closure to this issue, Charles, is what I'm very keen at. Like you rightly mentioned, the people, the family and friends of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the other 8 are saying that given this pardon is a secondary admission of the fact that they might have committed this offense. And to that extent, they don't want to see it that way. So it's a catch-22. And for someone that is sitting on the chair of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I wouldn't want to second-guess why President Tinubu decided to go forward and place it on the table and give the pardon. Because, like you rightly said, President Buhari attempted, and they said no. And the truth is, whoever is the leader of this country would like to move forward on this issue. The how and the when is the crucial issues here. As far as I'm concerned, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taken a step that others have not taken. He has made that declaration. It is the prerogative of the families of Ken Saro and others to say they reject it. However, what I wanted and what I still want is to see how both sides will be assuaged.
Yeah.
In a way and manner
that's the key thing.
Yes, in a way and manner that will start
Yeah.
the proper
Absolutely.
movement to closure on this issue.
Yeah.
Because these are people that are together. They are not just commingling, Charles. They are members of the same family, whether we like it or not.
Indeed.
And truth and reconciliation process is very painful, but it is very crucial, especially given the fact that these are people that are also staying in an environment that we have been unjust to them as a people.
Absolutely.
And I think there should be a holistic approach.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, this approach by Mr. President is the only play for someone that wants to demonstrate that he is ready to have a process of closure on this issue. If he does not force the hand at this point in time, then the question is when.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to come back to this because, as I said, hopefully, imminently, we'll be crossing live to Port Harcourt to speak to the son of one of the Ogoni Four, who is very angry at the president for what he has done and will want to hear their own side of the story. But let me come to you, Kenny. Let's move away from that. As I said, we'll return to it. Let's turn to the other issue that got a mention in President Tinubu's Democracy Day speech. Was it right for the president to celebrate the crisis that's tearing the opposition parties apart and threatening this country's democracy?
I mean, you know, for one, I was in PDP. I practically had.
Still in the PDP?
How can I be in the PDP? I practically had PDP in my
What do you mean? How can you still?
I left the PDP on the 22nd of June, 2022. I knew the party was going for an implosion because they had taken the wrong decisions. First, they decided that they were not going to zone the presidency to the south. For those of us who have been very vociferous, who had, if I didn't have any outing for PDP, I probably had over 200 outings as an analyst and as somebody who was speaking for the party. You remember also...
Well, I mean, you were the chairman of their
presidential campaign council. You've had me here. I was a spokesperson. I was a member.
Yeah.
And you know how many times you had me here speaking for the party. The main opposition party, the PDP, decided to go on a journey of implosion. It was self-inflicted. Because after the mistake that was done, well, I say mistake, after 2015 when President Jonathan gave himself up for that election, that everybody had perceived the idea that Yar'Adua's tenure was what he was finishing. He had done 6 years and they didn't want him to run. I thought the PDP was not going to make the same mistake again, as they had the golden opportunity when Buhari was leaving to zone this thing to the south. They decided to throw it open because they wanted to satisfy themselves. I remember I sat with my governor, we spoke about this because he was the vice presidential candidate, that is Ifeanyi Okowa. And you see, to sum it all up, the problem started from the issue of zoning. And so by the time a lot of us left in 2022, I knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's a carcass that are going to pick up because by the time your two main governors have left,
about the way the president
now I'm going into it. Well, I was building the background because if you have hurt yourself this much, why would you blame a president who will say that your ship is sinking? He's going for an election in 2027. He will only celebrate the sinking ship. But don't get me wrong. I even said it before on a program. I didn't even know the president was going to repeat it. That there can never be a one-party state. There will be opposition. The people will come together. A lot of people will also be dissatisfied, even in the APC, when primaries take place. But what the president is saying is that, look, I'm not going to encourage you not to leave the PDP and come to the APC because I don't want a one-party system. And what I'm saying is that you have sunk yourself. And that's why I had to build this background.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Well, let me come to a man who's fairly down the middle, because I don't believe you're in any political party.
Absolutely not.
Right. Do you agree with the president that he, and with Kenny, that he, the president, should not be the one to help the opposition put their house in order? Because, I mean, their central focus is to a large extent, indeed their raison d'etre, is to oppose him, isn't it?
I totally agree with Mr. President 100%. Now, what is happening this time around in the political dispensation, Charles, is what I call lazy politics. The opposition parties just want to sit and have it their way, armchair style, and that's not going to happen. Mr. President is doing what he's supposed to do, and he said the right thing. You don't expect Mr. President to hand over power to you on a platter. It's a competition. And if, which is true, everybody knows that whether it is the PDP, whether it is the Labour Party, or even the SDP as it were, are all suffering from self-inflicted injuries. The narrative about the ruling party, you know, whether inherently or directly being responsible for the issues, also speaks volume on the political dexterity of the dramatis personae of the political parties, who I have absolute respect for. In the PDP, in the SDP, in the Labour Party, are they saying that they have agreed and hands off that you don't have the political capacity and sagacity and the flexibility to be able to counter the political maneuvers of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and APC? And if that is the case, then I worry.
Well, that's not actually what they're saying. They have come up with their own response,
let me land.
which we will get to.
Yes, but what I'm saying is this. Whether it is in the United States of America or anywhere, Charles, I've never seen where opposition parties are given a pass to just come and stroll in. And I tell you what is more worrisome for me as a bystander or an observer of the political evolution of Nigeria is if the way and manner the opposition parties are going is how they are going now. I ask myself, if any one of them produces a presidential candidate and the person wins, how are they going to administer Nigeria when somebody that is claiming, or people that are claiming they want to be the president of this country, as diverse as it is with the complex issues, cannot handle the microcosm issues of something like a political party?
Well,
because
the answer to that is that if they manage to secure the presidency, then they're obviously doing something right. And the way politics works in this country, the orbit of power is really the attraction to politicians. That's all they care
for me
about.
as a Nigerian, what I want to see...
As soon as somebody wins, they'll gravitate towards...
Oh, that's definitely what's going to happen. So for me, that is not a real substance. What I will ask the opposition to do is to go back, review their strategy, be more frontal about this, and if there is any inherent move by the ruling party, political dexterity of the oppositions will be demonstrated for them to be able to counter that.
Well,
otherwise...
Sure. Let me come to you, Kenny, because in response to the president's speech, the opposition, led by the PDP, have suggested that the president was, quote, gloating in emptiness and should focus his leadership on this country's pressing issues, such as worsening insecurity, a failing economy, unstable electricity. These are things he really didn't get into in any depth in his speech, and they're saying that that should be his central focus rather than taking digs at the opposition. How do you assess their response?
Well, I thought that response was empty. Why do I say this? You know, we had a certain minister, before he became minister, his name was Lai Mohammed. I know I had even come against him, even as young as I was then in programs. I know how consistent he was in terms of opposing the PDP government. I know what it took the APC to conglomerate together. How many of them in the PDP now can sacrifice their ambition the way Bola Ahmed Tinubu sacrificed his vice presidential ambition to decide to say, look, if I was going to be the problem, then let me push forward the Shibajo.
Well, it's early days.
No, you say it's the early days.
Know that,
but you see, they say the journey of 1,000 miles starts, the first one that is successful starts from the breaking of firewood. From the positions that they have taken, they are all holding religiously to the fact that I must be the presidential candidate.
Well, you
must be able to push your ambitions aside for you to be able to take such
but you're making a presumption.
That's not a presumption. It is what I am saying. And you would agree with me that eventually that is exactly what is going to come to pass. Now, you're talking about the economy. Well, we can never say it's Uhuru. We know the economy, it's it's going through a whole lot of teething period. Teething period in the sense that the president inherited an economy that was almost in tatters. We were printing currency, we couldn't meet up paying salaries, states were coming cap in hand to beg after fact for their salaries to be paid. We're paying maybe trillions, maybe close to 5-6 trillion naira in terms of subsidy. There was so much waste in the system, and the president took the bold step of taking away subsidy. And once he took away subsidy and decided to unify the exchange rate, what did we get? We had an economy that had gone down.
Yeah, but Kenny, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're making exactly the same arguments that people who are criticizing the PDP and Labour are making now, which is that essentially President Tinubu was the national leader of the APC party. Why wasn't he having an impact? It was an APC.
He was not on the driver's seat.
Why wasn't he?
He was not on the driver's seat.
Well, you could make the same argument about.
But you remember people like us who were not there condemned the last government for a whole lot of these things. We pointed out those things. It wasn't like we did not know those things. You've had me in this studio over and over again.
But
I know how much I critiqued Buhari. Yes, it's the same APC government. But it also give it to him that he's bold enough to have accepted the fact that what he inherited was almost a comatose situation. And that he was going to start almost from the beginning. And because that was the situation he had, he was able to take us off that, danger zone that we're almost heading to Venezuela. I remember the Naira was almost going to 2,000 Naira.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that if you can make excuses for him, who was the national leader of the APC,
yes,
and you think that there is some credence to the point that you're making that he came in spite of all of that and was still able to, in your assessment, start to turn things around.
Yes.
Why wouldn't a member of the opposition do the same thing, even if their party
is falling apart? They're not putting themselves together. They are still too ambitious. That's the problem I'm having.
Okay.
They don't want to sacrifice their ambition. If they're ready to sacrifice their ambition and rally around one person, then we will have
Well, they haven't got to that point yet. That's their argument.
Are you sure Atiku will run as a vice president?
Well, we'll have to see, won't we? But I'm going to ask you guys to hold on a minute. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be going live to Port Harcourt to speak to Swage Badey, son of Albert Badey, one of the Ogoni Four who was lynched by a mob in May 1994. And of course, my two guests in the studio will still be here with me. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Primetime. I'm Charles Aniagolu. So it finally came. 30 years after the execution of the Ogoni writer and activist Ken Saro-Wiwa, he and the rest of the Ogoni 9 who were hanged by General Abacha have been fully pardoned and even canonized with national honors by the Nigerian government. But there have been swift reactions. The families of the 9 executed activists have welcomed President Tinubu's decision to pardon them, but say that implies guilt and are calling for them to be fully exonerated. But from the families and supporters of the Ogoni Four, whose lynching by a mob led to the execution of Mr. Saro-Wiwa and his fellow activists, has come pure fury. After years of opposing the push for posthumous pardons for what they consider to be a heinous crime against their loved ones, their disappointment is palpable. They accuse President Tinubu of taking sides, of inflicting a grave injustice on the murdered leaders, Albert Badey, Theophilus Orage, Sam Orage, and Edward Kabani. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Port Harcourt by the businessman and former chairman of the AC and ACN in Rivers State, Swage Badey, son of Albert Badey, one of the Ogoni Four who was lynched by a mob in May 1994. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Badey, for joining us. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good, and we can hear you here as well. I know you've had a long trip getting to where you are now, so we're really appreciative of you taking part in this interview. What's your reaction to President Tinubu's decision to pardon and confer national honors on the Ogoni 9, including Ken Saro-Wiwa, who were hanged for their part in the murder of your father and 3 other Ogoni chiefs, known collectively as the Ogoni Four?
First of all, thank you, Charles. Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I'm quite disappointed with the presidency and the position of the federal government because, in fact, as at yesterday, I started mourning my father again, and the same goes for the rest of the families of the 4. This was the second time my father is being murdered, and it's a very painful thing. We've lived with this for 31 years. I don't see why the federal government will be silent on the names of the 4, even if they have an intention to give them an award, a national honor, so to speak, because they awarded honors to Saro-Wiwa, Nedumite, the rest of the other 8, and they never made any mention of the 4. That is a complete disregard to the memories of our fathers who actually served this country diligently, without blemish over the years, and they were killed, murdered in cold blood in broad daylight by the same men that are being honored yesterday, and they made no mention of the 4. It is a very sad development.
I think I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean to interrupt you there, Suage, but let's just be very clear. I can understand the pain that you feel, but a lot of people have argued that Ken Saro-Wiwa, for example, was not directly involved in the killing of your father and the other 3 Ogoni leaders, that he was accused of inciting people. So that's not quite the same thing as saying that people like him were directly involved in the killings. But go on.
It is actually a vicarious responsibility on the part of those who were at the leadership level of MOSOP at that time. So if they were leading MOSOP and people were defamed, and at the end of the day, they came together, conspired, and actually hacked them down, butchered them to death, and today we have not seen their bodies up till today. How else will you, if somebody assigns somebody to go and kill, and you're not there, you have also killed that person. So he is a mastermind. I've said that before. He was a mastermind of the murders, for the murders of the 4. However, for me, I don't have anything wrong with the pardon. What I feel that is wrong here, which is an aberration, is how do you, I don't get it. How do you honor a murderer that you have just pardoned, and then you say nothing about our 4 fathers that were butchered to death in cold blood?
Yeah,
they didn't disappear.
I can see how that can be.
So
I can see how that can be a pretty painful thing. I mean, the fact that there was no mention, in fact, a lot of people have talked about that, the fact that there was no mention at all of the Ogoni Four in that speech. But let me ask you this, just in the interest of time,
and so
we can move forward. I mean, are you consoled somewhat, or perhaps encouraged by the fact that Mr. Saro-Wiwa and the other Ogoni 9 were pardoned and not exonerated?
Well, pardon is okay, like I said. It's the president's prerogative to grant pardon. But to now honor murderers, I think we are now introducing a new, law in our Nigerian society, because many people, there are a lot of Ogonis who escaped, went under the cover of the United Nations Refugee Program. Somebody like Goodluck Debo, who is in Canada, a lot of them escaped. So are you going to tell me that if he returns, you're going to also accord him an OON or a CON? We have respectable Nigerians like Wole Soyinka and a lot of people who deserve such honors. And there are a lot of respected Nigerians, I must say so. But I can now see why Chinua Achebe turned down such an offer. because it looks like values are not being considered anymore. Now, a murderer, you can now be a career murderer and be given an honor in Nigeria. That's what it means. That's what it means. That's the new law.
Right.
And so I'm not happy about this, because my father was a man who was straightforward. He served diligently, and at the end of the day, contributed to development, not just within the spheres of service as he served, but within Ogoni. He made a lot of contributions, and all he got was from the people through Sarawiwa's rhetoric, evil rhetoric, was for people to hack him down, butcher him, cut him into pieces, and take his body away. Until today, there is no remorse. Well, we can't cry on for more than 30 years. If certain people in Ogoni don't want to be remorseful for what they did, and they want to stand by the lies and continue to promote themselves because they want to enrich themselves, because they have protruding stomachs that cannot be filled, continue an activism that is not real to the people. These are pseudo-environmentalists. That's what I can call them. But however, I want to say that for the Badey family, and I think it also goes for the Kobanis and for the Orages, we have reached a point where we can say we leave everything to God. I think all this is all about how to come to Ogoni to get oil, and they are in a hurry about it. I am not prepared to betray my father for any form of compensation, for any form of, in fact, honoring him and putting him side by side with murderers. I don't think I would like to accept such an honor from my father.
Right, let me just come in there.
I don't need a compensation.
Right, Mr. Badey, in that regard, I wonder what you say to those who support Ken Saro-Wiwa, who insist that a pardon is not enough and are demanding a full exoneration for the Ogoni Nine, whom they are calling martyrs. I mean, they say a pardon reeks of injustice because the president himself acknowledged that their execution was unjust and should never have happened. I mean, well, what's your reaction to that?
It's very simple. All these people who are talking every day about exoneration, there is a sea of misinformed people. They are very young people who do not even know what happened. You know, disinformation leads to misinformation. And so they are so misinformed and they don't even know what they are talking about. I think it's only when you know and you feel it, that's when you know what is right to do. Just imagine that a man left his house and then he was hacked down. I was there. I saw blood splatter all around the wall in the palace. Today, they refer to that place in Gokana as slaughter. People leave their homes and say, I'm going to slaughter. And then people like Ledumite, Professor Ben Nanen, and all those who were at the leadership of Mosop, who have a responsibility to turn around our people for good. They have created a transgenerational catastrophe in Ogoniland. And this is going to pass through generations. Ogoni will remain divided. I'm so sad.
Well,
I've worked with President Tinubu
Well,
before,
that's the point, isn't it?
And I used to see him as one, as one who listens to both sides and does the right thing. But unfortunately, I think he's misguided this time. And
well, let's start looking towards solutions. Do you, Mr. Badey, subscribe to the demands of Ogoni groups like Mosop, for example, who are calling for the establishment of a judicial commission of inquiry to investigate and formally repudiate what they see as the irregularities of that 1995 tribunal that found the Ogoni Nine guilty, but also the circumstances that led to the killings of the Ogoni Four? Do you think it would be a good way to complete the process of restoring justice to Ogoniland?
So far as I'm concerned, the tribunal that sat, it was a military tribunal, and that was the law of the land then. And it was the same tribunal that tried Zamani Lekwot. And Lekwot, after the whole trial, it was seen to be free and fair. It was a fair trial, although Zamani Lukwat suffered a lot. But at the end of the day, was he condemned to death? No. He wasn't condemned to death. Now, in the trial of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the others, Ledu Mite was acquitted. Assuming it was an unfair trial, as people put it, Ledum would have been also sentenced to death. So I don't think that it is necessary to go back. But if they feel that that's what they want, there's no problem. Let the president do that. If he wishes to exonerate them, well, the power lies in their hands. We were depending on the government to do the right thing because we are not unlawful people. So if right now they think they want to turn everything around and grant them an exoneration, so be it. So be it. I just feel sorry for my poor father who fell to this, terrible cannibals. People who have no heart, a very dark heart.
Right, Mr. Badey, the problem here is that I can totally sympathize with your position, and the way that you feel, because obviously it was your father. But the problem here is that people have been killed. I mean, your father and 3 other Ogoni leaders were lynched, but then Ken Saro-Wiwa and 9 others were executed. And in both cases, they've paid the ultimate price. And that is the problem here, that there is no way of bringing them back, whether it is your father and the other certainly. 3 or the Ogoni 9.
Yes.
In those circumstances,
this is what bothers me.
Hold on. Let me just make this point. Let me just make this point.
Okay.
In those circumstances, what would be for you the best way to correct the tragedy that has befallen Ogoniland on all sides? What do you think can be done to make sure that all sides, from those supporting the Ogoni 4 to those who stand with the Ogoni 9, come away feeling that the stain of injustice has been erased?
Yes. First of all, you cannot wipe away the truth. You don't throw away the truth. The truth is what will bring us back together. Our fathers were murdered on the 21st day of May 1994. Now, those who murdered them want to put it at the doorsteps of the government that the military killed them, when we actually killed them, because what they want at the end of the day is to still make money from this. You grant them an exoneration, they take you to the international courts and demand for compensation. So it's all about money. They are also negotiating. They are all elbowing themselves into the percentage that they will have when the oil exploratory activity resumes. So for me, it's just all about the truth. People should be remorseful for what they have done. And then that will now also help us to be able to heal and forgive. But unfortunately, that is not the case now. Ledu Mite in particular, who was an actor, he was the vice president under Ken Saro-Wiwa, for goodness sake. I think we shouldn't even be talking about Ken Saro-Wiwa. He's late. We should be talking about those who were part of the system and when this atrocity was committed. So you have perpetrators and murderers being honored, and then the federal government looks the other way and trashes people like my father, who rose to the peak of his career as a secretary to government in the state and was butchered to death, and his body, till now, we cannot see. Face the truth. The truth is what will reconcile us. But if this is not done, that is why I said it's going to be a transgenerational trauma for the Ogoni people, and they will never be united.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, Mr. Badey. Suage Badey is a businessman, former chairman of the AC and ACN in Rivers State, and son of Albert Badey, one of the Ogoni 4 who was lynched by a mob in May 1994. And he was talking to me on the line from Port Harcourt. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, still with me in the studio here the policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company Baba Yusuf, and the communications and strategy consultant in the office of the Senate President, Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. It was very painful listening to him, wasn't it?
Traumatic.
What's your reaction to the things he had to say?
It's very traumatic, and anybody that has a pinch of conscience in him will be ticked by this very unfortunate situation, Charles. And like I said earlier, and I've said it many times before, you see, trauma can only be resolved or managed if there is an engagement. If there is no engagement, the trauma will remain till death. You can see the emotions, understandably so, of the gentleman, and like I said, earlier, the way and manner this is handled going forward is very crucial, because you heard him saying something about transgenerational, issue, which I was talking about. These are the same people from the same place. It's not as if, they belong to different tribes or ethnicity, which makes it a bit very, very, tricky and very unfortunate, because none of them can leave the location for the other. And it so happens, like I said many times, there are bigger issues, deeper issues that have now become secondary issues that should have been deeper issues. Environmental degradation, the issue of injustice for the people, how we take from them and give them nothing. Albeit now this issue that has divided them will remain an issue that will be most likely the dividing factor. You know how they say divide and conquer, and you stand together united or you fall divided, which will not be the only way. And the only way is if at the end of the day the Ogoni 4 also have a semblance of feeling of fairness and justice. And I hope and pray that Mr. President will use his high level of emotional intelligence and foresight to see how this other side also will have some sense of closure. Unless there is that closure, the transgenerational issue is what I even worry about.
That's a very good point. Kenny, you are from the Niger Delta.
From Delta State.
Well, that is part
Same
of
thing,
the,
of course.
part of the Niger
Of
Delta.
course,
I mean,
I'll just say that.
you have a better sense of the closeness, what he was talking about, the closeness of the communities, the proximity to one another, especially people in one community. Let's look at the way forward, because that really is the key. I think that's the point that you were talking about with the president and so on. What do you think ought to happen next?
Listening to him, you feel his pain. Anybody that has a father and the father was murdered in such a heinous way, it would be unthinkable that you would not have felt the way he's feeling. I can imagine how old he was in 1994 when his father died. And all he's trying to say is there should be a fair balance. And we're looking for healing. Ogoni is one area that has so much oil, which till today, they talked about cleaning of the Ogoni. They talked about the fact that we need to go back. If we need to face realities, the Ogoni people will need to settle this issue. They are the only ones that can bring this healing. It's not only Mr. President. Yes, he has made a cry. I think Mr. President has a listening ear. His cry is very credible. The people were killed. They were not criminals. It was a mob action. And I think the president would certainly listen if his attention is drawn to it.
Yeah,
but other than the president listening,
his hurt now goes beyond what the killing of his
he said
siblings.
that.
I mean, he's saying that the president didn't mention any of these.
That's why I said the president will listen to it. And knowing who President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is, he's one president that has shown us over these 2 years that he always has a way of accepting when he makes a mistake. It's very difficult for presidents to do that.
So do you accept that he made a mistake?
I'm not accepting that he's made a mistake, but he has always accepted when his attention is drawn to an issue and he looks at it and says, oh no, this could have been an oversight. But more importantly, why he said the Ogoni people are the ones that should bring them together here is because a lot of people have exploited the situation, and all the royalties that they could have gotten from the oils that would have been drilled from their place. We're talking about an economy now where we're talking of 2,060,000 barrels, but we're not even producing up to 1.5 or 1.6 million barrels as it stands now. And that's what our budget is predicated on. Imagine if we were drawing from the Ogoni area, we'll be probably producing 2.5 million barrels of crude oil. So he might look at it from the impression that the presidency or the federal government is more interested in how they can go back to, because that is what he was alluding to. But the Ogoni people should also look at what they are losing and come together to heal. It's been 31 years, but it's been 31 years of pain.
Yeah,
and that pain is what we have seen in this interview you have just had with Badey.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Baba Yusuf, we've got 2 minutes left, so just try and keep it brief. But I mean, looking at, I think Kenny made some good points there. Looking at a way to heal this, he's saying that the people of Ogoni should come together, look at the potential under their land and all the rest of it, and move things on from there. But wouldn't it have been better if the president, given his position, because that's one of the reasons this whole discussion is taking place now, if he had made the move and said, these people and these people, you know, have both suffered. He didn't mention them at all, and that's why they feel so hurt.
To be honest with you, any responsible thinking person that has a strategic foresight will recognize that even in your house or your home, or like in my home, you have what you call irreconcilable differences, also a toxic situation like this. A third party or an outsider or a leader that is seen as neutral party, or even someone that is not a leader that has that semblance of neutrality, is the only person that can bring the two warring factors that are pained, that are traumatized, over and beyond drilling of oil. Hello, we are talking about people whose parents' corpse they had not seen. They didn't even see the body of the parents. Now, how do you expect them to have a conversation with the other side? Now, in this particular context, I give it to Mr. President as the person that should be the one, and I hope and I expect he will do so. I believe he will do so, because coming in to provide that neutrality and balance as the father of the nation, he has the locus. As a political leader that has that dexterity, he has that capacity to say, how do we resolve this and move on? And in a way and manner that when he speaks, both parties will now have that what I call closure. Charles, unless there is closure, that transgenerational issue will remain. And the issue of oil is only important to we Nigerians, not to these traumatized people. Okay. So I hope and pray, as I expect, that Mr. President will take a rethink of this and look at it. And I expect that there will be closure in line with the best practices of crisis management of this nature.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. The policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company Baba Yusuf, and the communications and strategy consultant Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much.